Hello, this is Paul Harris from Mining Journal. The pleasure to be joined today by George Salamis, President and CEO of Integra Resources. Good afternoon, George. How's things today?
Doing great. Still under quarantine lockdown, but getting it done.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Now, Integra has the Delamar Gold Project in Idaho, USA. Why don't you start giving us a brief description about that, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, so Integra's Delamar deposit, situated in southwestern Idaho, as you mentioned, is 100% owned. It's a project that we acquired from Kinross just about 3 years ago. It's one of these strange big beast of deposit types which belongs in the category of low sulfidation epithermal, of which there are a number of them in that part of the world. In particular, you see a lot of them in northern Nevada, the really big ones, and we're one of those really big ones that's there. It's a project that we believe is no doubt it's going to become a mine based on the economic forecasts that we see in the PEA study. So we've been able to demonstrate really strong, compelling economics, sort of, mind-blowing 43% IRR numbers and 350 odd million US NPVs. And that was at old gold prices. So, today we're talking 60+% IRRs after tax and 600 million NPVs. So it's a really robust project. We believe it's going to make a great low-cost open pit heap leach operation. And I think lastly, the thing that we've demonstrated in the last couple of years on these deposits, of which there are two, there's more to the story than just these two deposits. We've really sort of fleshed out that this is going to get a lot bigger through more exploration, and that's really our stock in trade. We are an exploration company that's going to be developing a gold deposit, yes, but we really think that a lot of the value is created at the end of the drill bit, and we're going to flesh that out this year.
Well, that's very interesting in terms of, your PEA, I believe you had a mine life of about 10 years. So exploring and extending that, that will really generate extra interest and really position you in the eye of the hurricane, so to speak, in terms of possible M&A. And I suppose with that in mind, in your corporate deck at the moment, you've got a very interesting slide talking about the various ways in which the Delamar Project stands out. Maybe you can talk us through some of those things and why you feel Delamar is such a standout project.
Yeah, thanks for that. And that's a slide that gets a lot of attention in our slide deck. So it's basically it's a bit of research that we did in conjunction with the bank, going through basically a list of deposits all around the world, basically saying if a deposit has a resource estimate attached to it, well, then it's fair game. And I think the number was about 3,500 in total around the world. The thing that's interesting about it is if you start to apply different filters and criteria to that 3,500, in other words, okay, well, let's cut out all those deposits that have less than, that don't have an economic study, for example. Well, then that drops that number down significantly. And then let's cut out of those remaining, let's cut out those deposits that are not able to produce more than, say, 100,000 ounces of gold per year. And that drops that number down. And as you apply these filters down and you get all the way down to things like only deposits in tier 1 jurisdictions, or only deposits that are less than $500 million of CapEx, which, Delamar is clearly far less than that. You get to basically 4 deposits in total in North America that meet that criteria. And Delamar is certainly one of those.
You mentioned a moment ago the PEA, the IRR was about 43%, and that was at a $1,350 per ounce gold price. You're working on a PFS, which is due about, I guess, this time next year. What gold price are you going to feature in that? Well,
so I would love to be able to use $2,500, but it'll really come down to sort of the same criteria that everybody else uses, which is kind of a consensus view of gold at that time when you initiate you complete the study and start looking at the economics. I suspect we'll be looking at gold prices well north of $2,000 by then, and silver prices well north of $20 an ounce for sure. So, the economics are going to be very, very compelling on this when the study comes out.
Excellent. We've seen quite a bit of M&A starting to happen over the past 12 months. although quite a bit of that seems to be for or involving sort of troubled assets or troubled companies or high cost assets with perhaps only a handful of one or two real obvious value creating transactions. And you went through a successful M&A process with Integra Gold. So what's your view of what's happening in the market in terms of M&A activity?
Yeah, things are definitely heating up on the M&A front. For example, a couple of weeks ago we had what I call it Monday merger madness, which was 3 M&A transactions that happened all in one day, and there've been a number more since then. So what's causing it? Really, there's a bunch of things that are causing it. Obviously, the gold price picking up is obviously fueling a lot of M&A right now. I think in this first round of M&A, what you're seeing is, a number of these companies want to bolt themselves together or acquire production because they want to get bigger. Obviously, they want to get bigger, but the reason why they want to get bigger is they want to get to a size where they can start to attract that institutional money into owning them. The institutions typically buy larger cap stocks with larger production profiles, a basket of producing options within them. And that we're seeing, hallelujah, for the first time, we're starting to see that generalist money starting to come in. So they're trying to make themselves look bigger. In terms of what the future catalysts will be, I think you'll definitely see more M&A. And I think typically, if you look back a couple of cycles ago to the sort of the late 1990s, early 2000s, when that was a period of low commodity prices or gold, silver prices, you had a lot of what we viewed as, and I participated in it as a working for a major mining company, then high grading. So basically, you saw a lot of these producers high grading, mining through the high grade, basically scooping the cream off of the top of the cake. So that sterilizes assets. And you also saw a real lack of exploration money being spent in the ground by these majors. And so we've just gone through that same set of circumstances in sort of the 2011 till now. So there's a real scarcity of really big, meaty assets in tier 1 jurisdictions. Integra Delamar, we believe, is certainly one of those. I think once the producers start to feel really good about themselves, and once they look back in the larder and they say, well, the cupboard is bare, that's when the catalyst will happen. I don't think we're too far from that.
And the way that Delamar is shaping up, it looks like you'll really be pointing towards the mid-tier producers, or the top end of the mid-tier producers, where that seems to be getting increasingly competitive, and they're becoming sort of cash rich because of the high gold price, and they're the kind of companies that will be in a position to perhaps to bid for you in the future.
That's correct. However, there's another part to the Integra story, which is, this is an asset that we can build ourselves. The capital is $150 million US. If we had permits in hand, we could probably raise that, fairly easily if we wanted to right now. So it's not as if we are stuck in a position where we're sitting there waiting to be taken over. We have the option to build. We have the team that can build it. With the deposit is of a scale and lack of complexity from a development perspective that would make it relatively easy for us to jump into that game, and we have that option as well.
Okay, so you're continuing to explore both projects. You've been doing more work on metallurgy. So what's your work plan for the rest of the year, the next 12 months or so, to continue to advance the project?
So, as I mentioned early in the presentation, really, our view as value is really driven at the end of the drill bit, the exploration drill bit. And so we've got a lot of exploration planned for this year. It's about 16,000 meters of just pure exploration. And we're really sort of focusing on the high-grade components of these deposits. We've got a lot of bulk tonnage, low-grade material, which heap leaches quite well, will be pretty cheap to mine and process. But now we're going for these sweet spots on these high-grade systems that fed that low grade. And we intersected them last year. We think that we're on to something. So look to see over the next 6 months a lot of exploration focused on vein material that's grading 8, 10, 15, 20 grams per ton type stuff. that in addition to all the studies that are leading up to next year's feasibility study. So all those studies that will go into supporting the feasibility study. So that, as you mentioned, more metallurgy needs to be done. We're doing baseline environmental work, which will go into the study, and that work will then support future permitting. So there's a lot going on the ground right now.
Okay, and as we mentioned, the project's in Idaho in the US, and that's coming out of the continuation of some of the gold zones in Nevada. What benefits will Idaho provide in terms of being able to permit the project to become a mine?
Well, so first off, I mean, our experience is we're only 3 years into the game in Idaho, but I've got to say, we're dealing with an extremely supportive Idaho state government. I mean, when in the first couple of weeks of actually being an Idaho advanced explorer developer, we were invited to hit the road and market with state officials like the governor, we so much enjoyed the experience of marketing with the governor. This, for the first time, this is an elected official who's actually getting out on the road and saying, I support these junior miners and what they're trying to do. Never seen that in 30 years of my career to that extent. And so we so enjoyed that experience as much as we did, that we actually asked the governor, who went out on the road, to come and join us as a director, and he said yes, thankfully. So Governor Butch Otter ended up joining us. However, that said, those who replaced him are equally as supportive, and the door's always open to them every time we pass through town. The things going for us in Idaho right now, in terms of from a permitting perspective, this is a brownfield site. It was in production previously up until the year 2000. So it's not like mining happened, decades and decades ago. The community and the county, they're used to mining. They know the benefits of mining. They'll be supportive. The fact that this area has been previously disturbed and has been reclaimed, also that's a tick in the box. And just the positioning of our resources as well. So most of our resources of the 4.4 million ounces of gold equivalent sits on what's called patented ground. And with respect to the rights that come with those patents, the permitting of the extraction of the resources out from those patented claims is far less complex than it would be on, say, BLM ground or forestry ground, that sort of thing. So all of these things, it's not just one thing that we believe is going to make our permitting fairly straightforward. It's a number of things.
Okay, thank you. At times you have been quite outspoken about the industry and how it can and should improve its performance in certain ways. As ESG is becoming more important for investors, you've recently spoken and written about how junior explorers can and perhaps should respond to how COVID-19 is impacting the communities in which you work. Can you share some of your thoughts about that with me, please?
There is no better time for the miners, and I don't care if you're an advanced explorer, a junior producer, or a large scale miner. Now is the time to be getting out there and showing the rest of the world what we can do as a resource business to help out in this pandemic. And there have been several initiatives that have been done. The major mining companies, I think, have stepped up to the plate in a lot of different ways. We as a company, although we're not producing anything yet, we stepped up in the local community by helping out the senior citizens of the community, doing their shopping for them, so that they weren't necessarily exposed to an infection, let's just say. So we've done things like that, but there's no better time for us in the resource industry to be doing things like that. It's critical, and it will keep being critical, because we'll be developing these mining operations, and we'll be providing great jobs that will pull us all out of this economic hole that we're digging for ourselves in this pandemic. And we'll also be generating a lot of wealth in the communities that surround these mines. And so what better way to recover from the scars of a pandemic than through responsible mine development? That's our view.
Well, I think that's correct. There's very few opportunities for miners and explorers to sort of build trust with communities and host governments and other stakeholders. So I think it's a very important thing for companies to be engaging with. Okay, well, thank you very much for taking some time to fill us in with what's happening at Integra Resources, George. Good luck with all the plans, and speak to you at some point in the near future.
Thanks, Paul. This was great. Thank you so much.
This is Paul Harris from Mining Journal. Join us again soon. Thank you.